Present, by the way, for this with Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chesnoff. All the People's Council are present, and we'll do a formal opening when the jurors come down. Welcome back to Department 1, People versus Robert Durst. Mr. Durst is present with Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chesnoff. Mr. Lewis is in the back. We have Mr. Balian, Miata Henderson. Mr. Lewin is present somewhere. Where'd he go? Sure, I saw him.
He was here a second ago.
Oh,
I think he's in the back.
He fades into the woodwork sometimes. Very shy. All right. So unfortunately, our juror number 3 is not going to be able to continue with us. He had some health concerns, and so he is now excused from service in the trial. We're going to miss him, and I will thank him. But that means we call upon our present 13, alternate 1, to take that seat. He'll now be juror number 3. Okay, all of our other jurors and alternates are present. Welcome back. And Mr. Durst, like I said, everyone else is present. So, Mr. Balian, you are assisted today by law students?
Yes, the same law students who were reading when we broke. And they can retake their spots, please. We will continue on page 84, where we left off.
All right, and this is
Dr. Charles Harvey.
Dr. Charles Harvey, and please reintroduce our readers.
I'm Dick DeGuerin.
Dick DeGuerin, you look familiar.
I'm playing my part, Your Honor. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Right. I think.
And then Wendy Cam.
Yes.
Cameron Young.
Abaraj Grethren. I'm the judge.
Very good, everyone. Then let's, this we broke at the end of the direct examination so that Mr. DeGuerin could commence a reading of his cross-examination from that case. So you may proceed.
Hi, Dr. Harvey.
This
Looking to get a nod or something. No. I want to thank you for being so gracious as to open your office for us and to answer the questions that we had, and to even go further than that and do further studies. Those further studies were also to see if you could, with more certainty, age the bruising, correct? And it turned out that you could not?
Correct.
Okay, I want to step back for just a moment. This has been a tough case for you, hasn't it?
Tough in terms of just endurance, I suppose. It's been one of the most unusual cases I've ever done.
Certainly. It's clear now, isn't it, after 2 years of review and thought about this case, that Morris Black was dead when he was cut up.
I believe that is true, yes, sir.
No question about that, is there?
Not that I can see.
So, however he met his death, the manner in which he was cut up, or the fact that he was cut up, does not tell us how he met his death, does it?
No, sir. I can't make that.
He was, well, he was already dead when his body was dismembered, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
You also agree that if Morris, you didn't know how long Morris Black had been dead when the dismemberment began, do you?
I can make some observations about that, and that the lividity pattern was fixed on the back. There's pressure blanching that did not move at the buttocks and on the shoulders, indicating that he was in a supine position looking up.
Now let me stop you right there. We have had a little trouble with supine and the understanding of that definition before. And supine means on his back, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Okay. There might have been some inexact use by other witnesses at a different time, and now that we have that straight, it is your opinion that for some period of time, Morris Black was on his back, supine, when the lividity set in.
Set in and became fixed. So we're looking at, 12 to 18 for the lividity to become fixed in that position.
12 to 18 hours.
12 to 18 hours.
And what that tells you, in addition to his body stayed in one position for some period, long enough for the lividity to become fixed, is that he was dead before he was dismembered.
Correct.
Now, you're not able to say with any medical certainty that Morris Black met his death by reason of a gunshot wound. That's true, isn't it?
I am aware of some evidence that has not been brought in as part of my investigation and as part of my findings.
Sure.
From the police department that talks about the blood splattered patterns.
Sure.
And that those findings are consistent with some type of high energy experience that produces a very fine blood spattered pattern without much directionality to the way that the spatter hits the wall.
Of course.
That is consistent with a gunshot wound.
No question. But there is a difference between saying to this jury that what you find is consistent with something, then you have arrived at an opinion beyond, I was going to say beyond a reasonable doubt, to a medical certainty. There's a difference between being consistent with and medical certainty, isn't there?
Yes, sir, there is.
Because there are other possibilities than a gunshot wound as to the cause of death.
As to the cause, I'm trying to think of what type of injury would cause that type of blood spatter pattern other than a gunshot wound.
For a moment, and I know that you just can't take it piecemeal, but for a moment let's talk about the medical evidence which you saw as a result of your being the medical examiner on this case. The medical evidence being the examination of the body of Morris Black and an examination of his medical records. From that examination, you're not able to say to a medical certainty how he met his death, are you?
I find it a little difficult to agree with that because of the constellation of what's happening here. The aspiration of the blood into the lungs is a big, major factor.
Of course.
There's something that has caused an injury in the high area of the head. I mean, I have the torso below the middle portion of the voice box.
I think I hear what you're saying. There's some way that that blood was breathed in by Morris Black while he was still alive, sufficient to cause what you call terminal aspiration of blood, right?
Correct.
In fact, Morris Black drowned in his own blood. That's a layman's term, but am I correct about that?
I don't think it's quite a total drowning. I think that there is enough blood in there to create the spotting pattern, but not enough blood to be so totally occlusive that he would actually exclude the air.
But the question is how that blood got there, whether it was enough to cause his death or not, how that blood got there, and it had to be breathed in by Morris Black, right?
Correct.
It didn't drain in, it had to be breathed in.
Correct.
So for a period of time, maybe a very short period of time, we will ask you about that in a second, Morris Black, after receiving some injury that caused bleeding in his head, was still alive.
Correct.
That period of time that he was still alive is not something that you can say with any great certainty, is it?
No, sir, I cannot.
It might have been 30 seconds, it might have been a minute, it might have been 5 minutes. Am I right? It's within those parameters?
Yes.
Okay, could it have been any longer?
It could have.
Likely not, though.
Likely not.
All right. So one thing you can say to a medical certainty is that Morris Black upon receiving some injury to his head, lived and breathed between 30 seconds to 5 minutes, whereupon he died, right?
Well, because I can't say with certainty whether it was, 5 hours that he could have lived or not, I say that so far, everything that you've said is reasonable, but we have to include
The outer limits?
the outer limits as well.
As a medical examiner, as a forensic pathologist, you're a medical detective. Is that a good term?
That's fair.
In addition to the medical observations that you made, that is, observing the body, testing the body, and so forth, you are able to take into consideration other circumstances, right?
Yes, sir.
I suppose it's within the medical part of the observations that you make that you take into consideration the medical records of Morris Black, the existing medical records from UTMB, from the clinics where he was treated and so forth. That's part of the medical part, right?
Correct.
But you can also take into consideration other things that you learn in your investigation or in the police investigation.
Yes, sir.
For instance, you went to the scene where Morris Black's body was found.
Correct.
And you made observations there, not just about Morris Black's body, but the circumstances under which he was found, didn't you?
I believe I did.
Even made observations about the manner of packaging the body, this triple wrapping of some of the body parts, right?
Correct.
You were there at least during part of the search for the head, right?
Yes, sir.
You saw, at least for that night, the limits of the search for the head, didn't you?
Pretty much, yes, sir. I didn't actually go out on the boat and go to the perimeters, but I knew where they were.
Sure, and basically the officers, the dive team, whoever was there searching for the head, never got really out of your sight unless they were underwater. Is that a fair statement?
That's not quite accurate because they actually went around a point of land beyond which I couldn't see where they were.
Okay, well, you know they didn't go very far out there.
Well, they went all the way out, all the way to the I-45 area.
Sure.
From 81st Street where they were.
We've got a couple of charts here. Let me refer to the exhibits, to Defendants Exhibit number 13. I don't know that we have that here, which I'm sure that you can see. Are you probably familiar with that area too?
No, sir. I haven't seen this exhibit.
Well, not this particular one, but it's a standard. Actually, it's a combination of two charts. One chart ends about here, and the other one is to the west. But it shows Galveston Island, Pelican Island, and in particular, it shows the area where the body was found, where the body and body parts were found. And I'm just going to circle an area, if you can see while I'm circling. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Can you see it well enough, or can you take my word for it that that's the area? Here's the pier. Here's what used to be called Fort Industrial. Now it's called Harborside.
There's an access road right here.
Keep your voice up.
I said there's an access road here.
That's 77th, I think, or 78th, or something like that, and goes all the way down here to 81st.
Right.
And then here's the pier.
Right.
And where I-45 is around this cove.
Correct.
Okay. Now, did you see anybody go any farther than an arc I'm going to put on here, about like that? Did you see anybody go any farther in their search for the head than that?
No, sir, I did not.
Thank you. I didn't mean to get you out of your seat so quickly. Your office is over here in Texas City someplace, isn't it?
It is.
Your Honor, and I apologize. Can we just approach the sidebar very briefly?
Yes. Black was a very difficult man, that he insulted people, that he threatened people, threatened a nurse and a social worker at UTMB with harm, physical harm. You saw that, didn't you? Answer, I did see that, yes, sir. So the question calls for hearsay. I would have sustained an objection. I would sustain an objection now. The only issue is this, much as the defense bore a lot of bad questions and answers where I would have sustained objections, but the sides stipulated the testimony and they were stuck with it. Here, the people have suggested a sidebar that this is different. This is simply a stipulation as to unavailability, not to the text of the transcript, that the objection is not waived, and so that I may sustain the objection. And the people, by the way, offered just to edit the question. They would stipulate to, and you saw, I take it, in your investigation and the other parts of your investigation, not just the medical part of your investigation, that Morris Black was a very difficult man. Also hearsay, I guess that's a compromise. But tell me, refresh my recollection, please, as to the nature of your stipulation.
Well, Your Honor, my understanding of the stipulation was the transcripts that we agreed to had already been edited. And in fact, if you look forward to several pages toward the end, page 110, excuse me, 114, 115, there are some redactions and edits. And so what we have agreed to was the transcripts that we got.
So what is that?
Let me give you the exact stipulation.
That's what I'm going to ask you. We're going to take turns speaking for our court reporter. I'm going to ask you now, so the record is clear, if you will read the stipulation.
Stipulation 48, Dr. Charles Harvey. Dr. Charles Harvey, the coroner who testified at defendant Galveston's trial, has severe medical issues and is legally unavailable to testify in this trial pursuant to Evidence Code Section 240, period. That's the entirety of the stipulation. For the other stipulations where we have agreed to prior testimony, we have attached the transcript in the stipulation. We have come to an agreement with defense counsel, and these are for witnesses almost without exception who were available, but both sides agreed to let their testimony come in. So this is different. All we stipulated to was unavailability, not the admissibility of the statement.
What about the redactions that we see already?
Well, the only issue there is that those are things that in advance that we saw, and as Mr. Bailey had indicated off the record, this is one that was missed, but there's no stipulation. I would also add that it's a completely, not just a relevant question, but it goes to an issue that at this point in time is not relevant.
Right. So you say that that there were other redactions, and you got to those earlier. Did you stipulate as to those redactions?
No, Your Honor. So the defense is certainly free, if they would like, they are certainly free, as both sides are, to object to any questions that are coming in. That's how, as the court's aware, you treat prior testimony normally.
I get that, but I don't understand your, you haven't answered my question, which is there are additional redactions. How do you explain that? Was that done by informal agreement with the defense,
No.
or did you take it upon yourself simply to black it out?
No, what we did was we sent them those redactions. We asked them, we explained to them at the time that they were certainly free to challenge any of the evidence that was either going to be admitted or was not going to be admitted. We also were very clear to them in these conversations that Dr. Harvey was a different witness with respect to what we had agreed to. I made clear to
So
both.
your answer is not no, your answer is yes. This is an informal agreement as to the other objections.
No, there was never an informal. No, that is not correct. There was never an informal agreement.
Well, you say that you discussed it, you blacked it out, you sent it to them, and that was it. To me, that's an informal agreement by implication. So, all right, Mr. DeGuerin, what do you say to that? It seems pretty clear there was a stipulation to unavailability, and this is an no more, and this is an objectionable question.
My understanding And I might ask Mr. Lewis to chime in here because he's the one that worked out most of the agreements as to who would be stipulated to by reading the testimony. We still have others to come. Is that the transcripts that we were provided is what would be read? And so we've operated under that assumption. I believe that's a fair interpretation of our agreement. Here's the transcripts. I've got it in front of me. I'm going.
So you certainly have operated under that assumption, and that's fine with me. But that assumption doesn't seem to be a bar to my sustaining the objection here. Is there some other reliance of some kind?
No, Mr. DeGuerin is correct. The process that we went through is they would send us the transcripts. They would suggest their redactions. If we disagreed with them, we would take it up. I understand the people's wanting to distinguish this, but quite frankly, what they have here is they made a mistake, and they did not redact something that they wish that they had redacted. We have suffered at our peril for the same missteps, and quite frankly, I think this falls under what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Here's the difference, though. The difference is...
No, thank you. Objection sustained. I'll strike it.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we now have the charts that I referred to in the testimony a couple of pages back, but didn't have them available to put on the overhead projector. I'd like to go put those on. I know what just happened.
Do we have that?
I just need to supplement the record, Your Honor. I worked on many stipulations and many transcripts with Mr. Balian. We had an agreement that we would go back and forth. If anybody was going to make an objection, it was supposed to be made to the court by way of a hearing. That's what I was told, not in the middle. If I had known that we could make objections, there's a lot of things in court, and I didn't, because we had an understanding that we were stuck with the transcript that we agreed on.
Well, that's not, it's not as simple as that. Mr. Lewin explained the different sorts of stipulations. Obviously, this one is different. It's stipulating simply to unavailability. It is not stipulating to a transcript. Those are different ideas. And I'm sorry you're disappointed, but this is the hearing that you were describing. This is a hearing. The hearing is on the objection has been held, and the objection is sustained.
And most respectfully, Your Honor,
yes,
the fact that we did edit it, and instead of even last night telling us that they had an objection in midstream after we've agreed to I just want the record to reflect that this lawyer absolutely believed that the transcripts were agreed upon to be presented to the jury in the form that they were last shared with each other.
but this is not to be presented to the jury at all. This is not a transcript that goes to the jury.
I don't mean literally, I mean the reading of it, Your Honor. I appreciate the time, Your Honor.
That's why with the stipulation, Your Honor, there's no transcript filed.
I was supposed to tell you about this morning.
If you agree now, Mr. Lewin, I discussed with Mr. Balian already. We have you were not in the room. We have juror number 7 has a medical appointment that makes her unavailable on that date. We already are missing half the day because of another juror. Shall we? I let them know that we're not going to be in session on that date, and you'll make other plans for your witness.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to. Our understanding
Right.
of the witnesses, that was literally the only day that she was available. We'll have to figure out another day. We might need to take her out of order. It might even have to go later on into the defense case potentially, but that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, so the record's clear. The portion that was stricken, subject to the objection, was page 100, lines 2 through 8.
Correct.
Okay.
Although we had stipulated then, Your Honor, that they will be able to have him read lines 2 up until the line 5, difficult man. So that will be the question. So,
All right. Well, it seems like you ought to. Do you want that, Mr. The people will. I'd strike the whole thing, but I won't stand in the way of your agreement.
well, I did say I was willing to do that, and I'll stick to what I
I
said.
know. Is that Mr. DeGuerin? Is that what you want to do? read lines 2 through 5.5?
I will do that, Your Honor. I think that the second half of line 7 ought to be read too, to make, so his answer comes across.
I think that's fair.
Wait a minute.
There's no harm to, you saw that, didn't you? No harm to that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Recess.
Your Honor, the other issue is
Yeah.
the exhibits that I mentioned.
Yeah, we can mark.
Agreed? It's agreed then.
Yeah, if you got them, we can mark.
They're already in from the previous. It's not exactly the same chart, but it's the same.
It's fine. It's fine.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
It's fine.
This one,
Yeah, but we didn't have, you're just saying you're going to use these.
We'll use these. And what I'd like to do is go back to that question of the witness.
since I'm allowed to write them, they can go along with, figure out how to coordinate it.
That'd be on 92.
Mr. Durst and alternates have returned. Mr. Durst is present. Mr. Chesnut and Mr. DeGuerin. We have Mr. Bailey in the council table. Mr. Anderson, Miata, and Lewin. And Mr. Milley is coming in. All right, we have, we're resuming our reading of Dr. Harvey. You may continue.
Yes, sir. Your Honor, and for the record, we're going to backtrack just about a half a page. There was a reference to charts that I didn't have at the time that we read this. We now have charts that are already in evidence through the diver witness.
And what,
Just so the record's clear, there's a stipulation that although this is not the original exhibit that Mr. DeGuerin used, Mr. DeGuerin has said this is very similar, so the people have no objection to this exhibit being referred to, even though it was actually not the original exhibit. Is that correct, Mr. DeGuerin?
That's correct. The originals were the actual government-published nautical charts. This is off the web, but it's the same island and the same bay.
Is this now, and what exhibit is this?
Yes, there are 3 actually that have been introduced. They are D1, D2, and D3, and I will call them as I refer to them in the testimony.
Okay, thank you.
We've got a couple of charts here. Let me refer to Defendants Exhibit number 13, which I'm sure you can see. You're probably familiar with that too, referring now to D1.
No, sir, I haven't seen this exhibit.
Well, not this particular one, but it's a standard. Actually, it's a combination of 2 charts. One chart ends about here. And the other one is to the west. Referring to D2, Your Honor.
yes.
But it shows Galveston Island, Pelican Island, and in particular, it shows the area where the body was found, where the body and body parts were found. And I'm just going to circle an area, if you could see where I'm circling. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Can you see it well enough, or can you take my word for it that that's the area? Here's the pier. Here's what used to be called Port Industrials, not on this chart, that showed roads. Now it's called Harborside.
There's an access road right here.
Keep your voice up.
I said there's an access road right here.
That's 77th, I think. or 78th or something like that, and it goes all the way down here to 81st.
Right.
And then here's the pier.
Right.
And where I-45 is around this cove.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Now, did you see anybody go any farther than an arc I'm going to put on here about like that? Did you see anybody go any farther in their search for the head than that?
No, sir, I did not.
Thank you. I didn't mean to get you out of your seat so quickly, but your office is over here in Texas City someplace, isn't it? And now displaying D3 that actually has the word Texas City.
It is.
So you are, just from being here for a number of years, you are familiar enough to know that what the area that was searched is only a minuscule part of the total area of this part of Galveston Bay. That's true, isn't it?
That is true.
In fact, you have even come to the conclusion that sometime, that most likely the head had been in one of the bags that had been torn open and had been lost either to predators, underwater predators, or to the tides, didn't you?
Yes, sir, that's accurate.
And you took into consideration in your autopsy and in your autopsy report other artifacts that were found along with the body, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
This in your job as a medical detective.
Correct.
An example is the cover for a bow saw.
Correct.
Which you recovered when you opened the bags at the medical examiner's office.
That is correct.
I don't want to belabor this point. The cover for the bow saw is in evidence as State's Exhibit 64.
There's no pictures of the saw. That's the cover. That was actually a physical piece of evidence that was in evidence.
Okay. The cover for the bow saw is in evidence as State's Exhibit 64. That's in this plastic package. That's it, isn't it?
That is certainly my recollection. It matches that.
It has on that cover a profile of the saw blade that cover went to, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And it does not fit. It's not the same saw blade as this yellow one that's in evidence as State's Exhibit 37, right? We don't have a picture of that. No. Okay. There's actually an easier way to do it. You can just put that right up next to it.
Okay, these are the same design, but the scale is different than what the blade is on the saw.
Right. If you place the saw by the outline of the saw blade that's on the cover, it's not the same blade, is it?
Not in scale, but the design is the same. There are 4 sharp sawtooths, and then there's a double sawtooth.
Now, you don't know where this yellow saw came from, do you?
No, sir, I don't.
It also does not fit the pattern of this silver-colored saw, which is State's Exhibit 53, does it? Different size teeth, in other words.
There's a difference in scale on this one as well.
The scale on the cover that you found and the 2 bow saws in evidence, the difference is the scale on the bow saw cover is smaller than the teeth on the saws that are in evidence. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
You took into consideration other facts related to you by the investigators as the investigation progressed, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Such as you have already mentioned, the blood spatter. That's one of the things you took into consideration, right?
Yes, sir.
What the blood spatter did for you was it explained or offered an explanation, one explanation at least, for how Morris Black got the injury that you believe he had in order to aspirate the blood.
That is correct.
But it didn't tell you whether Morris Black received a gunshot wound as a result of someone assaulting him, or an accidental discharge or wrestle over the gun, did it?
It did not.
And so the legal duty that a medical examiner has under Texas law is to make two determinations, cause of death and manner of death. Is that right?
That is correct.
Cause of death is the very thing that you decide from all of the evidence caused his death, such as his heart stopping or a gunshot wound or a stab, something of that nature. That's cause of death, isn't it?
Correct.
Manner of death can be classified as either homicide, suicide, accidental, natural, or undetermined. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Is that all the possibilities?
That's all the possibilities except for pending investigation.
Which is basically undetermined yet, right?
That's an undetermined ruling, but it indicates to the Vital Statistics Bureau that there will be an amend to the death certificate to be filed later.
Sure. So still, the evidence that you had did not tell you to a medical certainty that this was homicide as opposed to suicide or accidental, did it?
No, it didn't.
Your observations of the body and body parts of Morris Black told you some things about Morris Black that you supplemented with your knowledge of his medical records and medical history. Am I right about that?
Yes, sir.
First, Morris Black was around 71 years old at the time he died, right?
Correct.
And Morris Black had a heart condition and had had a heart attack in the past, right?
Correct.
You found what you believe to be an old cardiac infarction or an old death of tissue in the heart that was not at the time of his death, right?
Correct.
You confirmed that with records from UTMB and the other clinic records that he had been treated.
Correct.
So Morris Black had a heart condition that was ongoing, and you confirmed with your findings, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
But you also saw physical evidence that Morris Black was a well-developed, muscular man, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
In fact, his arms, we have pictures of his arms here, State's Exhibit 445. The point being, looking at State's Exhibit 445, although he was 71 years old, Morris Black had well-developed biceps and forearms, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Here is another view of his right arm. This is State's Exhibit 444. And again, it shows that Morris Black, although 71 years old, had well-developed arms, muscular arms, right?
That's a fair characterization. Yes, sir.
I thought we had pictures of one of his legs. We have seen, you photographed a lot of things, didn't you? You got a lot of photographs.
Yes, sir.
And there are photographs that show very well that Morris Black's legs were well developed. His calf muscles were very well defined. His thigh muscles were large and well defined, right?
That's a fair statement. Yes, sir.
Did you learn as part of your investigation that Morris Black spent part of his time walking around Galveston at a vigorous pace exercising?
I don't think I was aware of that.
In your review of the medical records of Morris Black at UTMB, you were aware that Morris Black fought with the medical personnel, had to be restrained, had to be tied down to his bed on several occasions with restraints, didn't you?
I remember reviewing a portion where he refused to allow himself to be restrained because he claimed that he had been prior restrained and didn't like it.
Well, there was also, if you read the records thoroughly, did you read all the records?
I scanned through those records. I don't have a specific recollection of a restraint time, but...
You don't dispute that, do you?
I don't dispute it, no.
And you saw, I take it, in your investigation, in the other parts of your investigation, not just the medical part of your investigation, that Morris Black was a very difficult man. You saw that, didn't you?
I did see that, yes, sir.
So the point I'm getting at is the fact that Morris Black had a heart condition. Is it, so the point I'm getting at is the fact that Morris Black had a heart condition is it was not the kind of heart condition that would limit his being a vigorous, strong, I was going to use the word dangerous, but I won't use it for you, vigorous and strong. He could be vigorous and strong despite whatever medical condition he had, couldn't he?
Yes, sir.
The bruises, before lunch you were shown a photograph, I believe it was the lower back area, the bruise that's in the lower back area.
Okay.
And Mr. Sistrunk asked you, is this one bruise or is this multiple bruises? Your original opinion was it was one bruise.
Correct.
But you said here on the witness stand to these ladies and gentlemen, as you looked at that picture, quote, well, the picture altered my opinion somewhat. It could be multiple bruises, unquote.
Correct.
Now, this is not meant as a criticism of your photography, but it's true that what you used, the medium that you used to make your photographs was not film, but was digital camera work. Is that right?
That's correct.
And is it true that the digital method of making your pictures does not always show the true color?
As film can do the same thing, it's a matter of having proper adjustments for your camera. There's an element that's called white balance that takes into account whether the light source is from fluorescent lights, incandescent lights, daylight, or from a flash bulb.
Yes, but all that having been said and done, it's true, isn't it, that we cannot totally rely on the color in the photographs because of the printing process, from the photographing process, in the reproduction process. Some of the trueness of the color may be lost.
I'll agree to that.
For instance, Doctor, I have exhibit 479, one of 3 pictures of the shirt. They all seem, the pictures all seem to have about the same color, but when you see the shirt, we see that there's really quite a bit of a difference in what the picture shows the color to be and what color the shirt really is. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
And so when we look at these photographs of the bruises, or any other photographs for that matter, you can take that down. We have to be mindful that the colors may not be true. Is that a fair statement?
May I offer something here? And that is that the color of the shirt, as it exists now, may have changed and faded from the time that these photographs were taken.
Well, of course, that's speculation, but the testimony is that it's in the same condition as before it was ever tested by the fellow that tested it, who testified this morning to that extent.
Okay.
I take it hasn't been exposed to some light. I think it's been in one of these bags for a couple of years.
No, but it was received wet, and I'm not sure what chemicals or things that it might have been exposed to in the bay that may have eventuated a change in the color. I would like to look through my report. Here we go. No, I didn't indicate what the background color was. My biggest problem is, my recollection of these photographs and of the shirt when it was recovered seemed to indicate that we were dealing with a more yellow color like we see in the photographs. And if you look at the shirt, there's some areas where there seemed to be maybe a little bit of residual staining on it. I don't know. Honestly can't tell you with any certainty one way or another.
Well, it's definitely different from the color in the picture, isn't it?
That is true.
If you see the color in 443, it comes a little bit closer to the current color, but still not the same. Fair statement?
Fair statement, yes, sir.
So we have to be mindful, don't we, that the colors in the photographs may not always be true. Fair?
Yes, sir. I agree with that.
Thank you. Regarding the bruises, the most you can tell us about these bruises is that they had not turned yellow yet. further slides of the bruised areas do not assist in aging them, and they could be anywhere from shortly around the time of death to 5 days before the time of death when they were received. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Morris Black had a heart condition, right?
Correct.
His heart condition was such that he had a partial or total occlusion of his heart vessels, the vessels that feed the heart, right?
Yes, sir.
Standard treatment, standard medication treatment is blood thinners of some kind. Isn't that true?
That's frequently the case. It's, of course, individual, up to the doctor as to who gets what medications.
Certainly, even something as simple as aspirin taken daily can and often is prescribed to act as a blood thinner, true?
That is correct.
There are other prescription drugs that folks take to keep their blood thinner and to keep it from clotting so as to not make them as susceptible to further heart problems, to further heart stoppage or blockage in the arteries of the heart. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
One side effect of these blood thinners is that they cause a person to bruise easily, right?
Yes, sir.
A person on blood thinners, are you taking blood thinners?
I take an 81 milligram aspirin every other day because my stomach won't take it every day.
Okay, do you know what Coumadin is?
I do.
Coumadin is a prescription blood thinner, isn't it?
It is.
In your review of Morris Black's records, you notice that he had been prescribed the anticoagulant Coumadin, right?
I don't specifically recall that.
Well, let me show you a page, and I can't find it in this, but this is a copy of the, here's one, Mainland. This is May the 8th of '01, and that record indicates that Morris Black was using Coumadin.
I agree with that.
Coumadin is a stronger anticoagulant than ordinary aspirin, is that right?
I don't know how you rate things like that in terms of strength, but you know...
Well, it's by prescription only.
It is by prescription only, that's correct. Unless you go down to the hardware store.
The hardware store sells Coumadin?
Yes, they do.
Is it cheaper than Walmart?
Quite a bit cheaper.
How do you buy it?
You buy it in a little yellow box and you put it in the tray that has green pellets in it, and rats eat it and die.
I don't think I'll try that. I don't think I will substitute that. Many folks can lead a rigorous life even though they are on things like Coumadin, right?
Yes, sir.
Complicating the bruising that you found, in dating the bruising and the type and size of bruising that you found on Morris Black, is the fact that you now know that Morris Black, at least in May, was using Coumadin, a blood thinner. That complicates things about the bruises, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it does.
It means, number one, that he could get the bruises much easier. A person on Coumadin bruises easily, right?
Yes, sir.
Number two, the bruises would last longer, right? If I'm pushing the extent of your expertise, let us know.
I think that does kind of push up against there. I don't know whether they will last longer. I don't know of any studies that would help me answer that with knowledge.
They're going to be more widespread. They're going to spread more, aren't they?
That is probably true, that they happen easier and they're more intense and there's more of a spreading because the natural coagulation is retarded.
Sure. And so, if, for instance, I were taking either Coumadin or another type of blood thinner along with aspirin, and I were to stress some area of my body, say my hand, for instance, handling a target pistol like the one in evidence, I could get a bruise on my hand pretty easily without even realizing it, couldn't I?
I suppose so.
Like this one.
Is that from shooting a target pistol?
No, it's just from handling it. That's what someone on blood thinners might occur to someone on blood thinners from a relatively innocuous, as they say, even a blow to the body, Just an impact of some kind. Sort, right? Right?
I agree with that, yes.
In evidence is State's Exhibit 448, and rather than find the state's copy of it, the one that's in the evidence, I have a copy. Would you look at 448? We have that? Oh, okay, there we go. That's Morris Black's right hand, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You don't note it, at least I don't think you note it in your autopsy report, but that shows a discoloration, perhaps a bruise to Morris Black's right index finger. The end of his thumb and beginning on the soft tissue by his thumb and palmar surfaces of the thumb, doesn't it?
It's kind of a gray-green color that's on the index finger and the thumb.
This is not in the script. Could we turn the light off to get a...
Maybe.
What do... Mr. Chesnoff doesn't know that much about machinery, Your Honor. Hold on, let me find my place. With 108 at the top, did you read lines 1 and 2? I didn't.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's kind of a gray-green color that's on the index finger and the thumb.
And that discolor is a discoloration, isn't it?
It's a different color. Now, whether it represents a shadow or different illumination for the photographer, or whether it represents residual fingerprint ink, I can't really tell you.
You took these photographs, didn't you?
I took a number of them, and a number of them were taken at my direction.
There are other photographs of that same area that, here is another one that I don't believe is in evidence. It's slightly different, a little bit different lighting, and it likewise shows, and then shows even more discoloration. What do you call this part of the thumb?
That's just the heel of the hand.
The heel of the hand?
The thenar eminence. The heel of the hand is down there. The thenar eminence is up there.
Now, given that the photographs don't necessarily have true colors, there's still in at least 2 photographs of his right hand discoloration in the same area that a person would have their hand on a gun if it was a right hand. Isn't that right?
I would say that the discoloration in this area of the index finger, I'm not sure that I agree there's much discoloration that's present in the thumb. The thing about the index finger is that it has all these cuts on the other side of it.
We're going to get to that. I'm talking about the discoloration.
And that finger has been immersed in water over a period of time and has leached out things. And this index finger seems to have a more pale appearance than the other, more intact fingers that didn't have that soaking experience in the water.
Okay, so you're not prepared to call that a bruise?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay, now let's talk about these cuts. You would agree with me, wouldn't you, that the cuts on the right index finger there are more cuts on the right index finger than there are on the left knuckle?
I believe that's correct. Let me get my diagram. Yes, sir.
Here's a copy of State's Exhibit 449, the right index finger.
Yes, sir.
The other side even has another, and I'm not sure that one is in evidence yet, but it's another photograph of the same area, right?
Correct.
I'm showing 444, not the one that's in evidence, Judge. Do we have, I guess we don't have that. Now, really, what those look like are ragged tears. No, that's not it. Is that it? 444. Okay. Now, really, what those look like are ragged tears. Isn't that true?
Well, no, sir. I described them as sharp incisions. There's multiple parallel, sharply incised incisions. They're not ragged, irregular tears.
We discussed this when you allowed us to come and talk to you. Dr. Petty was there, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Binkin. Do you recall?
Okay, I don't specifically recall, but you know, I'm not disputing that we discussed it.
And we were asking you if you recall about how those cuts could, we were asking you if you recall about how those cuts could have gotten there. Do you recall that?
As I say, I don't specifically recall that.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's true, isn't it, that those cuts is consistent with cuts that might have gotten in the way of a saw, fingers that might have gotten in the way of a saw.
I do agree with that.
Now, given that you're unable to say how old, how many days, if it be days, the bruising was, you're also unable to say that the bruises you found in the body were all put there at the same time. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, sir. There's a great similarity of the appearance of the bruises overall, and that would lead you to think that they were inflicted in and around the same time period, but...
Anywhere within a week or 5 days?
But there's no way that you could tell that with absolute certainty.
Of course. You knew from what you were being told or what you learned in the years after your autopsy that Morris Black was known to a known troublemaker, to get in confrontations with people twice his size, to do crazy things like that, cuss people out on the street. You knew that about his background, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I became aware of that.
It's just as likely that Morris Black got into some confrontation several days before he met his death with It's just as likely that Morris Black got into some confrontation several days before he met his death with somebody, isn't it?
I cannot dispute that.
One thing I want to ask you about is an impression that's in one of your photographs. I believe this is in evidence as State's Exhibit 403. I'm not sure that's the correct one. It says 403, yeah. And what I see in the photograph is a straight line and a straight diagonal higher on the right hip than on the left hip. So that's a miscall, yeah.
What is it?
404, 402.
403. Yeah, so it's the transcript. At the time, somebody gave the wrong number.
Yeah. So do we have 404 or 402?
Yeah, that's 403.
Yeah. That one, I think that one has the line. No, the one in your right hand. Is that simply I think we've got the wrong photograph, but nonetheless. Is that simply some shadow in the photograph, or is that actually an impression? I see it in other photographs also. On the one on the other side, which is 404, I believe. Page 112, line 5.
Apologies. 402.
Question 402.
And what is your question, sir?
Is that what it appears to be? That is, an impression across Morris Black's back in a straight line, a linear impression, as though his body had laid on some object that was a straight line while this lividity developed and fixed.
I agree with that.
Okay. So we can show the jurors what we're talking about. This is State's Exhibit 403. And there's a line that I will just point between my fingers. We think the transcript is incorrectly describes the exhibit, Your Honor. It looks like an impression in his back, doesn't it? Now it fits that this impression is on his back because you believe that his body lay supine or some period of time, long enough for the lividity to fix, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we're gonna go ahead and take a break.
Can I finish this subject?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to make a display here. If you will pretend with me for a moment that this is the kitchen wall. Can you see? Let me show you what I will ask to introduce as Defendants Exhibits 26 and 27. I don't believe we have those available.
Yeah, they're there.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you. I know that you've never seen, at least I don't think you've ever seen, the inside of the apartment where Bob Durst lived as Dorothy Siner, a mute woman.
I've not seen the inside of that apartment.
You've heard a lot about it.
Yes, I have.
Okay, we move to introduce Defendants 26 and 27.
No objection.
They are admitted.
Do we have the other one? There, yeah, leave that up, please. What I'm going to do, what I'm just going to have you pretend with us, that this is, no, leave it up, please. What I'm going to do, what I'm just going to have you pretend with us, that this is the kitchen wall. Over here is the living room. I'm going to lay these pictures in front of the jury here. You notice in the photograph that there's a demarcation line between the carpet and the tile represented by it. Looks like a metal strip.
Yes, sir.
And if we pretend that that cable crossing the floor is a metal strip,
We got some yellow tape if you want to pretend that.
I actually have been asking for yellow tape to divide us here, Judge. Okay, the bottom of 113, line 24. And if we can pretend that that cable crossing the courtroom floor is a metal strip, if I were to lay at an angle with my head 1.5 feet from the wall, my back, the small of my back, at an angle across that strip, my feet in the living room, my body, most of my body in the kitchen, would that metal strip account for the impression in the back of Morris Black's back?
It could.
We pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Sistrom.
Doctor, excuse me, are you going to introduce?
Yeah, copies are being made.
Okay. Blood thinners didn't make multiple contusions on the back of Morris Black, did they?
No, sir.
And did you see any wounds on the back of Morris Black indicating he was an assailant in any previous fight?
No, sir.
You were asked about his muscles and his arms and his muscles in his legs. Did it appear that any muscles in his arms or legs prevented him from receiving these multiple contusions on the back of his body?
No.
Pass.
Any more questions?
No.
All right, sir. Then you are excused.
Can I follow up with something else?
Okay.
You were asked about State's Exhibit 443 about a particular line along the bottom of the back of Mr. Black. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you point that out to me? I didn't really see it with your laser, please. some indentation?
There's kind of a linear line that goes across right there.
Is that blue the area of the bruising or above the area of the bruising?
It's below this area of bruising.
So if Morris Black is on blood thinners and he falls on this little railing that is shown in between the carpet and the linoleum floor, falls hard enough and lays long enough to indent his body, wouldn't you expect some bruising there?
I would expect to see some bruising on both sides of the line, I think.
And as you look at the back of Morris Black, if you need to take a closer look, that's not the only line you see across his back, is it?
No, it's not.
How many do you think you see?
Well, there appears to be a linear line going that way, which is kind of at a fairly acute angle to this one down in the back. There's, well, it's not a line, it's a scratch, but I think that looks like it's an indentation type line right there.
So there's multiple indentations right along the back of Morris Black?
That appears to be the case, yes, sir.
No further questions.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, sir, you may be excused.
And that concludes testimony of Dr. Harvey. Is there are there additional exhibits to be marked?
Yes.
Well, in order to save time, since it's all memorialized in this document, we'd like to have this Charles Harvey exhibit stipulation marked as people's next in order.
Where are we?
Is it people's 190?
No, was it 189?
Let me see.
Oh, 189, I'm sorry.
Just a moment. Let's confirm. $189?
And because we have so many exhibits, I don't know, we have exhibits labeled from 189A all the way through 189 triple C. So to read them off one by one, we'll be here through this afternoon. But if I can have those exhibits incorporated, so it's 189A through Z, and then it goes to 189 AA to ZZ, and then 189 triple A to triple C. Yes. Does that satisfy the court?
Yes, that's fine. We'll utilize that to reconcile our records.
Yes, and the jury will have, I guess this is marked as an exhibit, so they have this as a reference if they need it.
That's good.
Okay.
Now, we have another transcript?
Yes, the next transcript is going to be for, is it Mario Sakachi? Sure. Okay, so we'll have Mario Sakachi.
And who are the readers for Mario Sakachi?
Right here.
I'm doing the prosecutor.
Okay, so Ms. Pham is going to read the prosecutor's part.
Aviraj Garikaran, I am Mario Sakachi.
Okay. I like how you say that. I am Mario Sakachi. You're already becoming Mario.
I'm a method actor.
Who's the defense lawyer?
Oh.
Who's going to play the court?
Who's the defense lawyer?
Oh, do you know how your copy? Mr. Lewis.
Okay. It was Mr. Lewis.
I have
I do.
And Your Honor, Mr. Henderson told me that we actually went out of order. We had pre-marked this, so we're going to end up marking this as People's 191, and then we'll go back to mark 190, if that's okay.
I think that's all right.
May I step in there and speak to Mr. Lewis for a moment?
All right.
Yes. And I believe we had been marking the transcript as a court's exhibit. If we can continue to do that.
Yeah. This is, what number are we in court? Yeah.
think it's Quartz 11 now?
It is.
Your Honor, I'll read for Mr. Lewis, but I need a stool to stand up on.
Is somebody reading the
I have this. This is Sakachi, right? I have a copy.
And I guess Ms. Pham will also be reading the portion of the court if there are any.
Yes.
We haven't marked it, huh? These two.
You have your exhibits ready?
Yes. Okay. Oh, you're waiting on us?
Yes. Oh, we're ready? Yes.
I'm ready
sorry,
for
I thought
you.
we were waiting for you.
I'm waiting for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
So-
seem to be getting them all your ducks in a row. So.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. So I guess we're prepared to read the testimony of Mario Sakachi now.
Okay, you may proceed.
Mario Sakachi was called as a witness by the state and first been duly sworn, assumed the witness stand, and upon examination testified as follows. Please state your full name for the record.
Mario Sakachi.
How are you employed?
I am the manager of the Chalmers True Value Hardware.
Okay. Is that here in Galveston?
Yes,
And how long have you held that position?
the last 20 years.
And what is Chalmers Hardware?
A retail hardware store.
And during the course of your business, did you ever come into contact with Cody Casales?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you remember approximately when that was?
September of 2001.
If I indicated to you it was October 1st of 2001, would that be?
Yeah, it was the end of September, early October.
And why did Detective Casales come see you?
A murder investigation.
And what type of information was he looking for?
He had a receipt or a handwritten receipt that he had found at a crime scene and wanted to verify that it was one of our receipts and the merchandise that was on it was ours.
And were you able to confirm or exclude that for him?
Yes.
And the information that he was looking for, did that come from your store?
Yes.
And how were you able to determine that?
In our computer program, there's a way of determining items which are sold and cross-reference those to an order number.
And the computer records you have of your sales, how far back do those records go?
We track that particular type of transaction for a week. We can track an item for 24 months.
And these different screens or different sections of the program?
Yes.
And so if someone went over there and purchased something today, you would be able to, 1 week from today, you would be able to find that?
Yes.
But 8 days from now?
I just don't have enough disk space to save all that data for every item for eons. No.
And so if we went over there today and asked you how many trash bags you had sold in the last week, you would be able to pull up each individual sale?
Yes.
And if we ask you how many trash bags you sold for the past 24 months, you would be able to tell us that also?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? The court says yes. Let me show you what's been marked for identification as states 164 and 165. Do you recognize these?
Yes, I do.
Are these kept in the regular course of your business?
Yes, they are.
Is it the normal course of your business to keep such records?
Yes, it is.
Are they made at or near the time of the actual event?
These are generated at the point of purchase. We keep a hard copy of these.
And are these made by people with personal knowledge?
Personal knowledge of?
Of the event?
Sure.
Offer states 164 and 165 as business records and states 163, which are business records that were previously filed and tendered to opposing counsel. The court says that's 163, 164, and 165. Yes, Your Honor.
No objection.
The court says they are all admitted. States 163. What is shown here, 163?
This is what we generated from the handwritten receipt Officer Casales brought in showing this item and trash bag and this drop cloth were both purchased on this particular order number here, which was, we couldn't quite make out the order number on the ticket because it was obliterated with moisture, but we could identify these two items, and they were correlated together. Both of these items were bought on the same sale.
Is that the only sale within the last week that you had sold those two items exclusively together?
Yes.
And what was the date of that sale?
This was done on 9/28/01.
And does this record show what time it was done?
No, it does not.
And what is shown here in states 164?
This is an invoice showing a package of rope, a 21-inch bow saw, and a 21-inch bow saw blade sold to Farmers Marine Copper Works.
Is there a purchase order number on it?
Yes, there is.
What's the purchase order number?
119338.
And what is shown here in states 165?
This is a purchase order from Farmers Copper Works, purchase order number 119338 for a bow saw and a package of rope.
So this purchase order from Farmers Copper matches your sale of that bow saw?
Yes.
And the sale of that bow saw was when?
9/26/01.
I will show you what's been admitted as States Exhibit number 37. Do you recognize that?
It's a bow saw that we sell or one like it.
Okay. And here on the handle, about approximately the middle, there's a portion of a tag. Are you able to read that?
Yes.
What does it say?
It's green thumb.
What types of bow saws do you sell?
We sell green thumb and we sell Gilmore.
Let me show you what's been marked for identification as States Exhibit number 96. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is this the bow saw that you sell?
Yes, it is.
In fact, this was purchased today, wasn't it?
Yes.
Offer states 96.
No objection.
The court says it's admitted. Compare states 96 to states 37.
They are identical other than age.
So you're able to identify this as the same make of bow saw that you sell?
Yes.
And the bow saw cover here on the new one, which is states 96. What information is contained here?
The manufacturer and the brand name, what it is, the size, what it does, and our tag and the pattern of teeth. The teeth are covered with the protective covering so your hands don't get cut.
Now, this pattern with the teeth, is that to scale or is that just an indication of what it looks like?
An indication of what it looks like. It's a razor tooth design.
Let me show you what's been admitted as States Exhibit number 64. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is that?
The is a cover of a bow saw.
Does it have your tag on it?
Yes, it does.
I noticed this tag has blue on it, and this one has yellow on it. What's the difference between the two?
The dates. There's different color tags for different years.
Okay, this indicates the year it was.
Several years ago.
This is a green thumb bow saw cover blade.
Yes, it is.
Are you able to tell whether States 64 was purchased from your store?
Well, it was purchased from my store. I can't tell you exactly when.
Right.
But it was purchased from our store, purchased or stolen, one of the two.
Let's just stay with purchased, okay? States Exhibit number 8, which is an old hickory knife cover. Are you able to identify that?
That's one of our products.
That's got your tag on it?
Yes.
States Exhibit 38. Do you recognize the tag on this?
Yes, I do.
Is that one of your tags?
Yes, it is.
So whatever this is was purchased from your store?
Yes.
I will show you what's been admitted as States Exhibit number 40. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
A package of trash bags.
It's got your tag on it?
Yes, it does.
Again, this is one of your blue tags?
Yes, sir.
I will show you States Exhibit number 31. What is this?
A package of trash bags.
Partially full anyway?
Yes.
And you notice your tag on this?
Yes.
And it's got a yellow tag on this.
A yellow tag.
Were you using both yellow tags and blue tags?
At that time, yes, we were. We had some blue tags left, and we switched to yellow tags sometime during the year.
When Detective Casales came and talked to you, was he asking you about bow saws also?
As I recall, yes, I think he did ask me about bow saws at the time, and we generated this particular invoice for him then. We looked up bow saws, and that was the only one that was sold in that week.
So you were able to tell how many bow saws were sold between October 1st, or whatever day he came to see you, 2001, and 1 week prior?
Yes.
And how many bow saws did you sell during that time?
1.
And that was to Farmer's Copper?
Yes.
As far as bow saws, is that a common item you sell, or pretty rare that you sell?
We sell a fair amount, a couple a month, maybe on average.
Did I ask you to look up how many you sold in the last 2 years?
Yes.
How many have you sold in the last 2 years?
59.
I pass the witness. The court says, any questions?
Briefly, Mr. Sakachi?
Yes.
I didn't want to butcher that. The initial trip that Sergeant Casales takes out to your store, he's asking who might have been involved with the purchase of that receipt they recovered, correct?
He didn't ask me who was involved. He just asked if we could find these items or generate a receipt for them.
You determined that a clerk named Crystal Clark was the clerk who...
The clerks that sold the items, yes.
And Miss Clark couldn't recall anything unusual or eventful about the purchase?
Not to my knowledge.
How long have you been at Chalmers, Mr. Sakachi?
Next month, it'll be 27 years.
Pretty regular.
Yeah.
You know who Morris Black was?
I remember him, yes, sir.
This is a gentleman, Morris Black. Here's a picture.
Yes.
You see him in your store a number of times?
I have seen him in the past, yes.
And some of your clerks have had less than pleasant experiences with him?
As I recall, yes.
What about you yourself? Have you ever had a run-in with him?
No.
Just a point of clarification, I think we have established it, but to be clear, this bow saw that the state put in evidence as State's Exhibit 37 was not sold to Robert Durst, correct?
I have no way of knowing that.
Well, your invoice.
We sold a bow saw to Farmers Marine Copper Works.
Did you learn that Sergeant Casales recovered this from those folks?
No.
Just a point of clarification, defense actually offered it. Other than that, we have no.
Well, what is in evidence as State's Exhibit 37? And that's what the document reflects, is that the bow saw and replacement blade were sold to Farmers Marine Copper Works, right?
We sold them a bow saw and a blade.
That matches this description.
That matches that description and matches that item. It may not be that item.
Right, but one like it.
Yes.
And y'all have a long-standing relationship with Farmers Copper Marine, right?
Yes, we do.
Or Marine Copper.
They have been a customer of ours for a number of years.
So much so, they have an account with y'all.
Yes.
And you are familiar with the personnel that come into your store from Farmers.
They generally have a purchase order with them to buy something, or they will call ahead of time and give us the number, but yes.
One last question. Are you aware you sell blood thinners?
Blood thinner?
Yeah.
Could be.
We learned today that in your fertilizer there's coumadin.
Coumadin, yeah.
You knew that too?
There's lots of chemicals that we sell that, you know, the state governs, not blood thinner, but...
Thank you for your time, Mr. Sakachi.
Nothing further, Your Honor. The court says, all right, sir, you are excused.
Exhibits?
Yes, Your Honor, we have a two-page exhibit stipulation, if we can have that marked for our identification, as a People's 191. And within the testimony, there was a number of exhibits mentioned. We have them correlating as People's 191A through 191H. And just so the court and the jury are aware, the two bow saws, the two actual bow saws that were mentioned in the testimony, we do not have, obviously, in our possession. So.
And that's People's 37 and 96 on the transcript, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All right. Now you have another transcript.
We do.
That's Dina Davis, Quartz 12.
That is going to be Quartz 12. The transcript will be marked as Quartz 12. And we have again, we have the readers for Miss Davis. Who's reading for Miss Zina? Or Zina?
Zina Simmons.
Zina Simmons?
Hi.
I'm playing Miss Simmons.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Mr. DeGuerin, are you reading for?
Yes.
And for the record, we have Miss Pham again reading for Miss Simmons. And we have, I'm sorry, can you pronounce your last name?
Durst.
Reading for the prosecution.
Thank you.
Be it remembered that upon this 7th day of October 2003, the following proceeding occurred before the Honorable Susan Chris, Judge of the 212th District Court of Galveston County, Texas. Zina Elaine Simmons Davis, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Mr. Bennett, please state your name.
Zina Elaine Simmons Davis.
And do you have a cleaning company?
Yes, I do.
And what is the name of that?
Let's Talk Dirty Personal Service.
And how long have you been running this service?
15 years.
And so you were running this business back in September of 2001?
Yes.
And do you do any type of advertising?
Yes, I do.
And how do you advertise?
I have a storefront in the newspaper.
And specifically, let me direct you to this case. Did you ever get a call to clean an apartment at 2213 Avenue K?
Yes, I did.
And did you eventually clean that apartment?
Yes, I did.
And when did you get called about that?
It was on a Thursday because I was at home resting, taking a nap, a break during the day.
And when did you have an agreement to clean the apartment?
We made the agreement for Saturday.
Do you remember what Saturday it was?
It was the 22nd, 23rd, whichever day that was.
Of September of?
Of September, yes.
2001?
Uh-huh.
And who did you make this agreement with?
I made it with the gentleman at the table. He said his name is Robert Closty.
There's four gentlemen at the table. Are you referring to one in particular?
The gentleman in the middle with the blue jacket. He's a little smaller now. He was a little heavier. Him.
Will the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant? The court says it will.
No objection.
Mr. Bennett, and this apartment you went to clean, is that in the city of Galveston?
Yes, it is.
Is that in Galveston County?
Yes.
And that's in the state of Texas?
Yes.
Did y'all have an agreed on price?
Yes.
And what was that price you had initially agreed upon?
$80.
And that was based upon what?
His description of the apartment and what he wanted it done. And when I got to the apartment, I saw it wasn't as big as he was describing it. It was just a 3-room efficiency. And I told him I would go down to 60, and he said no. He said he would pay me the 80 because he wanted a very good job done.
Okay, and did you have anybody helping you?
I had some stragglers that worked for me at the time.
Somewhat?
Stragglers. I call them stragglers.
And what were their names?
Terry and Larry.
How did they help you out?
Larry helped me bring the equipment in, the vacuum and the materials that I used, and then they left to go do another job.
Did they ever come back?
Yes.
Did they help you do anything when they came back?
They just vacuumed and took the equipment out.
So both of those gentlemen went into the apartment?
Yeah, in the end.
Okay, what areas of the apartment were you supposed to clean?
I cleaned the whole apartment, the bathroom, the kitchen, and the living room, and desk down.
And what time did you arrive there on that Saturday?
I was running a little late. I think him and I were supposed to have been meeting about 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I'm a late sleeper, so it had to be kind of like 10 o'clock. And I was a little late. My guys were a little late with my van.
Was there any part of the apartment that you were not supposed to clean?
Well, the cupboards, the refrigerator inside. You know, I was just describing to him when he said he wanted a good job done what I do. I do the baseboards, the cupboards, the windowsills, the ceiling fans, wipe the doors in and out, and that was it.
Was there a closet in the efficiency?
Yes, there was a closet.
Did you clean this closet?
No, we just cleaned the outside of the door.
Why did you not clean the closet?
He said we didn't have to. We didn't have to open the closet.
Were you given specific instructions not to open the closet?
He just said I didn't have to open it. No, he just said we didn't have to do the closet. I didn't have to do the closet.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions. The court says, any questions?
Hi, Miss Simmons.
Hello.
Or Miss Davis now, right?
Zena Lake Simmons Davis. I go by all of them.
You and I have talked on the phone a couple of times, haven't we?
Yes.
When you spoke to the gentleman on the phone that called you about cleaning the place, that's the way you first spoke to him, right?
Yes.
But you actually met the gentleman, didn't you?
Yes.
It's this man that's seated right here next to me.
Yes.
He was polite to you?
Yes. He was a little anxious because I was late.
You were supposed to be there at 10 and you were a little late?
Yes.
Thank you. That was no big deal, was it?
No, it's just that he had somewhere to go and I just hate, being late with the client.
Did he mention he was going to a wedding?
No. He just said he had to be somewhere. He just said he had somewhere to be.
Someplace to be, and that was on Saturday the 22nd, I believe it was.
It was either the 22nd or the 23rd. I haven't even looked back at the calendar to make sure.
And these two fellows that were helping you, Terry and Larry?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Did they have some kind of difficulty with the guy that lived upstairs?
Yes. When they were bringing my vacuum and my buckets and things like that in, the door going into the house, it will self-lock. And so they had to leave the door open in order to bring the materials in for me. And I had Larry to go back out and get another thing, vacuum for me, and he left the door open. And the guy was coming in and asking us who we were, and I told Larry, don't worry about him. Just, whatever you have to do what he had to do.
And I mean that again was no big deal, right?
No.
Did you meet the fellow that said something about keeping the door closed?
No, but I saw him.
What did he look like?
A big, heavy man. I remember black, bushy hair. I didn't look at him too long.
Okay, the man that you met that complained about the door being open, it was not this man, was it?
No.
And I am showing Defendants Exhibit 19.
No, it was not him.
Yeah, I believe it was a picture of Morris Black.
We would still stipulate that's a picture of Morris Black.
As far as you know, you didn't see that man that day, did you?
No.
Had you ever seen that man before?
Well, I'm on the strip where they hung out at, so I meet a lot of people, and a lot of people come by my store.
In fact, do you think now that you look at this picture, this is a picture of Morris Black, everybody knows that in Galveston by now, it's been in the paper. You think you saw this fellow walking by your store a couple of times, didn't you?
I wouldn't say that, but maybe, like I say, it's a lot of people walk up and down 23rd.
Okay.
Now, I do recall someone put a note on my door saying that I had the United States flag backwards, and I was like, who would do something like this? It was right about that time.
Who in the world do you think might walk by your store and register a complaint with you that you had the flag on wrong?
Somebody nutty or very patriotic.
Okay, now let's get back to meeting the gentleman. His name is Bob Durst. He gave you a false name.
Over the telephone, he told me Robert Closty.
And in fact, you made kind of a joke with him when you talked to him, didn't you?
Yes. I said, all your friends call you Santa Claus at Christmas time?
He didn't get it, did he?
No. I went on straight to the business at hand.
When you cleaned the apartment, did you notice that the furniture seemed to be fairly new?
Yes, I did.
Like the television and the microwave and the other stuff that was in there looked like it was fairly new and not used a whole lot.
Right.
Was the apartment real dirty or medium dirty, or you tell us, you're in business?
Well, I am like him, what he said. The last service he had hired before me didn't do a good job, and that's what I did for him.
Now, this business about the closet, Mr. Bennett asked you about the closet. And I think your answer was it wasn't necessary, but Mr. Durst, Mr. Closty, did not say, don't go in that closet, did he?
No, he just said, you don't have to open the closet. Don't go in it. Just don't worry about it.
Quote, just don't worry about it, end quote?
Uh-huh.
And when you got there and saw that the apartment was smaller than what had been described to you, and it wasn't going to be as much work, you said you would do the work for less, didn't you?
Yes.
But Mr. Durst or Mr. Closty said, no, that's all, quote, no, that's all right. I just want you to do a good job, and I will pay you what you agreed to do, end quote.
Yes.
And everything, he paid you right then, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And I guess that's really the end of it. You never really talked to him again. You never saw the apartment again, right?
No. I left him a note describing a service. I mean, I had a feeling that, that somebody that uses a service, and, with me seeing the expensive bicycle and everything new in here, I left him a note telling him, a list of weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly, and my suggestions of, my number and everything for him to call me back. All of them, my cell number and the number he called me previously.
Even though it was kind of a, I wouldn't say run-down apartment, the apartment was kept nice. The things that Mr. Durst had in his apartment seemed to be of good quality, right?
Yes. And he opened the refrigerator to get some juice, and I saw he ate kind of the same type of food I like to eat, you know, bean sprouts and, you know, brie cheese and stuff like that, so.
Okay, and you also mentioned that there was an expensive bicycle.
Yes.
A very nice bicycle.
Very nice bicycle.
One other thing, did you notice that Mr. Closty, actually Mr. Durst, did you notice that he had kind of an accent, a New York accent?
Well, yes. You know, I knew it was foreign. It wasn't Texas. It wasn't Southern.
In other words, he didn't talk like a good old boy from Texas, did he?
No, it wasn't Southern, and the dress wasn't Southern.
Okay, now there's a little, we've got to be careful about our language here. You said dress. You don't mean he was wearing a dress, do you?
No, I meant...
the way he was dressed.
Right. You know, down here in the South were shirts and shoots and boots, and he was kind of had a jacket on and, you know, some nice khakis. I think I remember green like and some nice Land's End kind of boots.
Some nice looking clothes.
Yes, and his eyeglasses had tape on them. I will never forget that because I wear my glasses like that now.
By tape, you mean they were taped?
Yeah, it looked like it was taped, you know.
It looked like he needed a new pair of glasses.
Yeah.
Well, he got them. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm carrying his tradition on. I am wearing my glasses like that now.
So he got them. He got arrested when he got them, too. Thank you very much. We'll pass the witness.
The court says, any more questions? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Bennett, in response to Mr. DeGuerin's question, I believe you stated, and correct me if this is wrong, Mr. Durst or Mr. Closty told you, don't go in it, referring to the closet?
Well, no. I was describing to him, you know, when he paid the $80, I started describing to him what I do for $60 or $80, and what I would do for $60, I would for $80, and I would do for $60, and I wanted to assure him. And I was describing that we clean the doors in and out, get all the dust. Mostly it's in your closets and it's in your vacuum. And he just stated that we didn't have to do the cupboards and we didn't have to do the closet. And he just said, as a matter of fact, don't even go in the closet. And that's just what I did. I just didn't go in the closet.
Let me show you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 502. Do you recognize what that is?
It's a calendar.
Okay. From what time frame?
2001.
What month?
September.
That was the month you cleaned the apartment?
Yes.
I would move to offer State's Exhibit for demonstrative purposes at this time.
No objection.
The court says, all right, that's admitted as well then. Mr. Bennett, for demonstrative purposes at this time. The court says, sure. Mr. Bennett, what day did you say you were first contacted, which Mr. Closty?
On the 30th. So that had to be the 20th.
When?
Thursday.
Thursday, okay. Would you write on there the day he, Closty, contacted you?
It was around 2 o'clock-ish or 3 o'clock-ish.
Just the date would be fine.
Okay.
And the date you actually cleaned it would be what?
Okay, this is Saturday and Sunday. So the Saturday would be the 22nd because it was a Saturday, and you got Sunday here.
Sunday would be the 23rd?
Sunday would be the 23rd.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would move to offer for all purposes.
No objection.
The court says it's admitted. Mr. Bennett, no further questions. The court says, anything else?
No.
The court says, all right, ma'am, you are excused.
Okay, thank you.
Right, with that, we will take our afternoon recess until 1:30. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. At 1:30. I need another vote.